Hello and welcome back. It's good to have you here tonight. Tonight, we're going to explore something extraordinary, something you're using right now to understand these words, something that's been with you since before you were born your brain, the 3 pounds of tissue inside your skull that somehow creates your entire experience of being alive, your thoughts, your memories, your sense of self, your consciousness, all of it happening in your brain right now. But we're not going to approach this clinically, not like a textbook, not like a lecture. We're going to explore the brain the way it deserves to be explored, with wonder, with curiosity, with the kind of gentle attention that lets you drift, lets you relax, lets you move toward sleep while learning things that might change how you think about thinking itself. You don't need to remember everything tonight. You don't need to take notes. You don't need to study. Just let these ideas wash over you. Let them drift through your mind. Some will stick, some will fade, and that's perfect. That's exactly how your brain works. Selecting what matters, letting go of what doesn't. Your brain knows what to do. It's been doing this your whole life. So get comfortable, settle into your bed, let your body sink into the mattress. Let your muscles relax. Let your breathing slow. And let's begin this journey into the most complex object in the known universe, your brain, the thing that makes you, you. Close your eyes if you'd like, or keep them open, whatever feels right. Your brain will guide you towards sleep when you're ready. It always does. For now, just be here. Just listen. Just let yourself drift through these fascinating facts about the brain. Your brain, the one listening right now. The one already starting to relax, already moving towards sleep, already doing exactly what it needs to do. Let's begin. Your brain is approximately 3 pounds. 3 pounds of soft tissue. That's all. About the weight of a small cantaloupe, the weight of a laptop computer. 3 pounds. And yet this 3-pound object is more complex than anything else we know of in the universe, more complex than any galaxy, more complex than any supercomputer, more complex than anything humans have ever built or ever will build. 3 pounds. That's all it takes. 3 pounds of brain. And from that emerges you, your entire experience, your entire existence, your entire consciousness from 3 pounds of tissue. Most of that weight is water. Your brain is about 73% water, nearly 3/4 water. The rest is fat and protein and carbohydrates and salts, organic material, biological tissue. Nothing magical, nothing supernatural, just ordinary matter. Ordinary elements, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, the same elements that make up everything else, but arranged in such a way, connected in such a pattern, organized in such a structure that consciousness emerges, that you emerge. From water and fat and protein, from ordinary matter, comes extraordinary experience. Your brain contains approximately 86 billion neurons. 86 billion. That's more than 10 times the number of people on Earth. 86 billion individual brain cells, and each one of those neurons can connect to thousands of other neurons, creating a network of connections that numbers in the hundreds of trillions. Hundreds of trillions of connections in 3 pounds of tissue, in your skull right now. As you're reading this, as you're thinking about this, 86 billion neurons are firing, connecting, communicating, creating your experience of this moment. These neurons communicate through electrical signals and chemical messengers, electricity and chemistry. That's all. When a neuron fires, it sends an electrical signal down its length, a tiny spark, a minuscule charge. And at the end of that neuron, that electrical signal triggers the release of chemicals, neurotransmitters. These chemicals float across the tiny gap between neurons, the synapse, and when they reach the next neuron, they trigger another electrical signal, and so on, billions of times per second. Electrical signals, chemical messengers, electricity and chemistry. That's all. And from that emerges thought, emotion, memory, consciousness. You. The speed of these signals varies. Some neurons conduct signals quickly, very quickly, up to 268 miles per hour, faster than a race car, faster than most airplanes. These are the neurons that control your movements, your reflexes, the ones that need to send information fast. But other neurons are slower, much slower. Some signals travel at less than 2 miles per hour, slower than you walk. These slower signals carry different kinds of information. Information that doesn't need to arrive instantly. Information about pain, about temperature, about bodily sensations that can take their time. Your brain uses different speeds for different purposes. Fast for what needs to be fast, slow for what can be slow. Efficient, elegant, perfectly designed through millions of evolution. Your brain uses about 20% of your body's energy, even though it's only about 2% of your body weight. 20% of your energy. That's remarkable. That's expensive. Energy is precious. Your body doesn't waste it. But your brain gets 20% because thinking is expensive. Maintaining consciousness is expensive. Keeping those 86 billion neurons alive and functioning and connecting, that takes energy. Lots of it. 20% of everything you consume, every calorie you eat, every breath you take. 20% goes to your brain. Even when you're sleeping, even when you're resting, even right now, as you're drifting, as you're relaxing, your brain is still using 20% of your energy. Still working, still functioning, still keeping you alive, still being you. Most of that energy goes to maintaining the possibility of activity rather than actual activity itself. Your brain isn't using energy primarily when you're thinking hard or concentrating. It's using energy just being ready, just maintaining the baseline state, just keeping neurons alive and poised to fire, ready for whatever comes next. That's where most of the energy goes. Into readiness, into potential, into the ability to respond instantly to whatever happens. Your brain is always on, always ready, always prepared. That takes energy, constant energy, even in sleep, even in rest. Your brain maintains itself, keeps itself ready, uses energy to stay alive and functional and capable. Always. The brain has no pain receptors. None. Your brain can't feel pain. Can't feel anything, actually. No touch receptors, no pain receptors, no sensation at all. This 3-pound mass that creates all your sensations, all your pain, all your touch, it can't feel anything itself. Neurosurgeons can operate on the brain while the patient is awake, can touch the brain, can cut into it, can stimulate it, and the patient feels nothing. Nothing from the brain itself. The skull has pain receptors. The meninges, the membranes around the brain, have pain receptors. That's where headaches come from. But the brain itself? Nothing. Silent. Numb. Insensate. Creating all sensation while feeling none. This is strange when you think about it. Strange and profound. The thing that creates all your feelings can't feel. The thing that creates all your pain can't hurt. The thing that generates your entire sensory world is itself insensible. There's something almost poetic about that, something humbling. Your brain creates your entire reality, your entire experience, everything you've ever felt, or sensed, or experienced. And it does so in darkness, in silence, in numbness. Your brain has never seen light, has never heard sound, has never felt touch. It sits in complete darkness inside your skull, receiving only electrical signals, only chemical messages, only patterns of neural activity. And from those patterns, from those signals, from that information, it constructs your entire world. Everything you see and hear and feel and experience, all constructed, all created by a brain that experiences none of it directly. Your brain is constantly predicting, constantly guessing, constantly creating models of what it expects to happen next. You think you're perceiving reality directly. You think you're seeing what's there, hearing what's there, feeling what's there. But you're not. Not really. You're experiencing your brain's best guess about what's there. Your brain takes in sensory information, light hitting your retina, sound waves vibrating your eardrum, pressure on your skin, and it interprets that information based on your past experience, your expectations, your context. It predicts what should be there, and then it shows you that prediction. Most of the time, the prediction is accurate, close enough to reality that you don't notice the difference, but sometimes it's wrong. That's when you experience illusions, misperceptions, mistakes. Your brain guessed wrong, predicted incorrectly, and you experience something that wasn't quite real. This is happening all the time. Right now, you're not seeing these words directly. You're seeing your brain's interpretation of light patterns. Your brain is predicting these words based on the letters it recognizes, the language it knows, the context it expects. It's constructing the meaning before the information even fully reaches your conscious awareness. That's how you can read so quickly. That's how you can understand so easily. Your brain is predicting, guessing, filling in, creating your experience slightly ahead of the actual sensory input. You're always experiencing a prediction, a model, a construction. The popular idea that people are left-brained or right-brained is a myth, an oversimplification. Everyone uses both hemispheres. Everyone needs both hemispheres. You can't be predominantly left-brained or right-brained in any meaningful way. Both hemispheres are active all the time. Both contribute to all activities. Yes, there are specializations. Yes, language is usually left lateralized and spatial processing is usually right lateralized. But that doesn't make you a left brain person or a right brain person. That doesn't determine your personality or your abilities or your career. You're a whole brain person, using both hemispheres, all the time, together. The left brain, right brain myth is a neuromyth. Appealing, memorable, simple, but wrong. Your brain doesn't work that way. You use all of your brain, all the time. However, there are rare cases where the corpus callosum is severed, either through surgery to treat severe epilepsy or through congenital absence, or through injury. These are called split brain patients. Their hemispheres can't communicate, can't share information. Each hemisphere processes information independently. And studying these patients has taught us much about brain function, about consciousness, about how the brain creates unified experience from separate processes. In split brain patients, the left hemisphere can speak, but the right hemisphere cannot, because language is left lateralized. So if you present information only to the right hemisphere by showing it only to the left visual field, which goes to the right hemisphere, the patient can't tell you what they saw, can't verbally report it. The left hemisphere, which controls speech, didn't see it, doesn't know, can't report. But the patient did see it. The right hemisphere saw it, processed it, knows it, just can't speak about it, can't verbally report. But if you ask the patient to point to what they saw, they can, using their left hand, which is controlled by the right hemisphere. The hand points correctly. The mouth says, I don't know what I saw. The hand knows, the mouth doesn't. Two separate consciousness? Two separate awareness? One brain split into two separate systems, two separate awareness, two separate experiences. Who are you? Where is the you? Is there one you or two? This is philosophy. This is neuroscience. This is unsettling and fascinating and deeply strange. The brain develops from back to front. The most primitive areas, the ones we share with reptiles and early mammals, develop first. The brainstem, the structures that control basic survival functions, breathing, heart rate cycles, sleep-wake cycles, reflexes. These develop early, in the womb, before birth, necessary for survival. The midbrain structures develop next, the limbic system, the emotion centers, the structures involved in motivation and reward and memory. These develop in infancy and early childhood. The cortex, the wrinkly outer layer, develops last. And within the cortex, the front develops last of all, the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for planning, decision-making, impulse control, abstract thinking, long-term consequences. This area doesn't fully mature until the mid-20s, until around age 25. That's why adolescents and young adults take more risks, are more impulsive, have harder time controlling emotions, are more susceptible to peer pressure. Their prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed yet, isn't fully mature, isn't fully connected. They're thinking with emotion and reward systems that are fully developed, but without the full regulatory control of the prefrontal cortex. Their brain is still developing, still maturing, still wiring itself. And that affects behavior, affects decision-making, affects everything. This has implications for education, for criminal justice, for parenting, for policy. If the brain isn't fully mature until 25, should we hold 18-year-olds fully responsible for their decisions? Should we let 16-year-olds drive? Should we send young people to war, to prison? These are difficult questions, questions society is grappling with, questions neuroscience informs but doesn't answer, because science tells us when the brain matures, but values tell us what we should do about it. Science and values together, neuroscience and ethics, both necessary, both important. The brain is incredibly adaptable in childhood, much more plastic than in adulthood. Children's brains rewire easily, learn quickly, adapt readily. This is why children learn languages so easily, learn skills so quickly, recover from brain injury so well. Their brains are highly plastic, highly adaptable, highly capable of rewiring and reorganizing. But this plasticity declines with age, gradually, slowly. The brain becomes more fixed, more stable, more resistant to change. This is both good and bad. Good because stability means expertise, means stable personality, means consistent function. Bad because it means harder to learn new things, harder to change old habits, harder to recover from injury. The brain trades plasticity for stability, trades flexibility for consistency. Both have value. Both are necessary. Childhood plasticity allows learning. Adult stability allows expertise. Both are part of normal brain development. But even adult brains remain somewhat plastic, can still learn, can still change, can still rewire. It's harder, it's slower, it requires more repetition, more practice, more effort. But it's possible. You can teach an old dog new tricks. You can learn new languages in old age, can learn new skills, can form new memories, can adapt to new situations. The brain remains plastic throughout life, just less so, just more slowly, but still capable, still adaptable, still capable of change. This is hopeful. This means growth is always possible. Change is always possible. Learning is always possible. At any age, in any circumstance, your brain can still change, can still learn, can still grow, as long as you're alive. The brain has specialized regions for different functions. This is called localization. Different parts of the brain do different things. The occipital lobe at the back processes vision. The temporal lobes on the sides process sound and are involved in memory. The parietal lobes on top process touch and spatial information. The frontal lobes at the front are involved in movement, planning, decision-making, personality. Within these lobes are even more specialized areas. Areas for recognizing faces, areas for processing language, areas for understanding numbers, areas for processing music, areas for experiencing emotion. The brain is a collection of specialized regions, each with its function, each contributing to the whole. But these regions don't work in isolation. They work together, constantly communicating, constantly integrating, constantly coordinating. Vision doesn't happen just in the visual cortex. It involves memory regions, attention regions, language regions, emotion regions, all working together, all contributing, all creating your unified experience of seeing. Every mental function involves multiple brain regions, working together, coordinating, integrating. The brain is both localized and distributed, specialized and integrated, modular and holistic, both at once. This is the brain's architecture, specialized regions, working together, creating unified experience from diverse processes. There's regions specialized for faces, the fusiform face area, a small region in the temporal lobe, highly active when you look at faces, much more active for faces than for other objects. This region allows you to recognize faces quickly, automatically, effortlessly. You're an expert at faces. You can recognize thousands of faces, can distinguish subtle differences, can identify people by their faces instantly. This is because you have specialized brain hardware for faces, a dedicated neural system. Evolution made faces important, recognizing individuals, reading emotions, understanding social cues, all from faces. So the brain evolved specialized circuitry, dedicated processors just for faces. When this region is damaged, people develop prosopagnosia, face blindness. They can see faces, can see the features, can see eyes and nose and mouth, but can't recognize the face as a whole, can't identify the person, can't tell faces apart. Even familiar faces, even loved ones, even their own face in the mirror. They have to rely on other cues, voice, hairstyle, clothing, context, not the face itself. The face means nothing because the specialized face recognition system is damaged, non-functional, gone. This shows how specialized the brain is, how modular. You can lose the ability to recognize faces while everything else remains intact. Vision's fine, memory's fine, language fine. Just face recognition is gone because it was a specialized system, a dedicated module, and that module was damaged. There's also a region specialized for places, the parahippocampal place area, active when you look at scenes, at rooms, at landscapes, at environments. This region helps you navigate, helps you recognize where you are, helps you build mental maps. Taxi drivers in London, who must memorize incredibly complex routes through the city, have larger parahippocampal place areas than average. Their brains adapted to the demands of navigation, grew the relevant area, strengthened the relevant circuits. This is neuroplasticity in action, the brain adapting to the task, growing the hardware needed for the skill, physical change in response to mental practice. The hippocampus is essential for forming new memories. Not all memories, not old memories, not skills or habits, but new declarative memories, new memories of facts and events, new memories you can consciously recall. The hippocampus encodes these, consolidates these, transfers these to long-term storage in the cortex. Without the hippocampus, you can't form new memories. You can remember the past, can remember everything that happened before the hippocampus was damaged, but nothing new, nothing after. Each day is forgotten. Each experience evaporates. You live in an eternal present, unable to form new memories, unable to create new past. This is the condition of patient H, the most famous patient in neuroscience. His hippocampus was removed to treat severe epilepsy. The surgery stopped the seizures, but it also stopped his ability to form new memories. He lived the rest of his life unable to remember anything new. Each day forgotten by the next. Each person met was met for the first time again and again. The hippocampus is essential, not for all memory, but for this type, for this function, for forming new memories of facts and events. But HM could still form new skills, could still learn new motor tasks, could still... The brain operates on oscillations, rhythms, waves of activity, brainwaves, measurable with EEG, electroencephalogram. These waves represent synchronized activity across populations of neurons, millions of neurons firing together, in rhythm, creating measurable electrical oscillations, different frequencies for different states. Gamma waves, the fastest, are associated with focused attention and consciousness. Beta waves with alert waking thought. Alpha waves with relaxed wakefulness. Theta waves with drowsiness and light sleep. Delta waves with deep sleep. Your brain shifts between these frequencies depending on your state, depending on what you're doing, depending on your level of consciousness. As you fall asleep, the oscillations slow, from beta to alpha to theta to delta, faster to slower, higher frequency to lower frequency, alert to drowsy to asleep to deep sleep. This is measurable, visible on EEG, the brain slowing down, activity becoming more synchronized, more rhythmic, less complex, simpler patterns, slower waves. This is sleep. This is your brain resting, recovering, consolidating, cleaning, in slow waves and deep rhythms and synchronized oscillations. Sleep is not the absence of activity. It's different activity, slower activity, more synchronized activity, but still activity. Your brain is always active, always firing, always processing, just differently, just more slowly, just more rhythmically, in sleep. Even in deep sleep, the brain is active, is working, is processing. Deep sleep is when the slow delta waves dominate, when the brain is most synchronized, most rhythmic, most regular. This is the deepest sleep, the most restorative sleep, the sleep where memory consolidation happens most, where waste clearance happens most, where physical restoration happens most. Deep sleep is essential, critical for health, for memory, for cognitive function, for immune function, for longevity. Deep sleep declines with age. Older adults get less deep sleep, less delta wave sleep, less of the most restorative sleep. This may be why memory declines with age, why cognitive function declines. Less deep sleep means less consolidation, less restoration, less optimal brain function. REM sleep is different. REM stands for rapid eye movement. During REM sleep, your eyes moved rapidly under your closed eyelids, darting back and forth, scanning a dream landscape that doesn't exist. REM sleep is when most vivid dreams occur, when most memorable dreams occur, when the brain is highly active, almost as active as during waking, but the body is paralyzed, completely paralyzed, except for the eyes and the diaphragm. This paralysis is protective, prevents you from acting out your dreams, prevents you from moving while you're experiencing dream events. The brain sends movement commands during dreams. Your dream self moves, walks, runs, but the body doesn't, because the brainstem blocks the signals, paralyzes the muscles. This is normal. This is healthy. This is REM sleep. Sometimes this paralysis persists briefly after waking. You wake up but can't move, can't speak, can't open your eyes, conscious but paralyzed. This is sleep paralysis. Terrifying, panic-inducing, but harmless, temporary. The paralysis dissolves within seconds or minutes, but while it lasts, it's frightening, made worse by hallucinations that often accompany it. The brain is in a mixed state, partially awake, partially still in REM. Consciousness is online, but dream imagery persists. You're awake, but still seeing dream-like hallucinations, sensing presences, feeling pressure, seeing shadows. Sleep paralysis with hallucinations. This has given rise to legends, demons sitting on chests, succubi and incubi, alien abductions, all probably sleep paralysis, all probably the brain in a mixed state, partially asleep, partially awake, paralyzed, hallucinating, terrified, but safe. Just the brain transitioning between states, just a temporary glitch, just sleep paralysis. The brain constructs time perception. Time is not perceived directly. You don't have a time sense organ. You have eyes for light, ears for sound, skin for touch, but no organ for time. Instead, the brain constructs time perception from other information, from events, from changes, from memories. Time is a construction, an inference, a creation of the brain. This is why time perception is flexible, variable, distortable, why time flies when you're having fun and drags when you're bored. Your brain is constructing time perception, and that construction depends on your state, your attention, your emotions, your experience. When you're engaged, focused, enjoying yourself, time passes quickly, feels quick, flies by. Why? Because you're not paying attention to time itself, you're paying attention to the activity, to the experience. Your brain is busy processing the task, processing the enjoyment, not counting time, not tracking duration. So subjectively, time compresses, feels shorter than it actually was. Hours feel like minutes. The brain wasn't tracking, wasn't counting, was engaged elsewhere. So time passed unnoticed, flew by. When you're bored, waiting, uncomfortable, time drags, feels slow, crawls. Why? Because you are paying attention to time, watching the clock, counting the minutes, tracking the duration. Your brain has nothing else to focus on, nothing else to process, so it focuses on time itself, and every second feels noticed, feels experienced, feels long. Time drags because you're paying attention to it, because you're experiencing every moment of it, because your brain is tracking it, counting it, marking it. Time perception is not objective, is not fixed, is constructed by your brain, based on your attention, your state, your emotions, your experience. Fear and danger speed up time perception, make time feel like it's moving in slow motion. This is a common experience during accidents, during emergencies, during moments of terror. Time seems to slow down. Everything seems to happen slowly. Why? Because your amygdala activates. Your brain goes into high alert, starts recording memories at a faster rate, paying more attention, encoding more details, laying down richer memories. And then when you remember the event, you remember so much detail that it feels like it must have lasted longer than it actually did. The richness of the memory creates the illusion of slow time. Your brain encoded so much information that it feels like time expanded, like the moment lasted longer. But it didn't. It was the same duration, your brain just recorded more, paid more attention, created a richer memory, and rich memories feel like slow time. This is adaptive. In danger, you need to pay close attention, need to encode details, need to remember what happened so you can avoid it in the future, so you can learn, so you can survive. The brain responds to danger by enhancing perception, enhancing memory, enhancing attention. And as a side effect, time feels slower, feels expanded. This is the brain doing its job, protecting you, helping you survive, by recording everything, by paying intense attention, by making time feel slow so you can respond. Time perception is flexible, adaptive, constructed to help you survive. As you age, time seems to speed up. Years pass more quickly. Summers feel shorter. Life feels faster. Why? Several reasons. One is proportional. When you're 5 years old, 1 year is 20% of your entire life. That's a long time, proportionally huge. When you're 50, 1 year is 2% of your life, proportionally tiny, so it feels faster, feels shorter, less significant. Proportional time changes how you experience duration. Another reason is novelty. Children experience more novelty, more new things, more first experiences, more learning, more change. Novel experiences create rich memories. Rich memories feel like more time. Familiar experiences create sparse memories. Sparse memories feel like less time. As you age, life becomes more familiar, more routine. Fewer novel experiences, fewer first times, more repetition, more sameness. So memories become less rich, less detailed, less dense, and time feels faster. Feels like less happened because less novel experience happened. The brain encodes less, remembers less, time compresses. This is why traveling makes time feel slower, why new experiences make time feel fuller, because novelty creates rich memories, rich encoding, rich experience, and rich memories feel like more time. Want life to feel longer? Want years to feel fuller? Seek novelty. Try new things, have new experiences, learn new skills, go new places. Your brain will encode more, remember more, and time will feel slower, fuller, richer. Time perception is constructed by memory, by novelty, by experience. You can influence it, you can change it through what you do, what you experience, what you choose to encode. The brain is a pattern recognition machine. That's what it does best. Finds patterns, recognizes regularities, predicts based on patterns. This is the basis of learning, of memory, of intelligence. The brain extracts patterns from experience, finds what repeats, finds what's predictable, finds what's reliable, and then uses those patterns to predict, to anticipate, to prepare. This is incredibly useful, incredibly powerful. Allows you to navigate the world efficiently, to respond quickly, to know what's coming, because you've seen the pattern before. The brain recognizes it, predicts what happens next, prepares the appropriate response. Pattern recognition underlies everything: language, social interaction, skill, knowledge, all based on patterns the brain has extracted from experience. But this strength is also a weakness. The brain sees patterns even when they don't exist, even in randomness, even in noise. The brain is so good at finding patterns that it finds them everywhere, even where there are none. This is called apophenia, seeing patterns in random data, seeing faces in clouds, seeing conspiracies in coincidences, seeing meaning in randomness. The brain can't help it, can't turn it off. It's always looking for patterns, always finding patterns, even when there are none. This leads to superstitions, to magical thinking, to conspiracy theories, to false beliefs. The brain found a pattern. The pattern felt real, felt meaningful, but it wasn't. It was random. This is learning. This is how you learn, through prediction error, through being wrong, through reality not matching expectation. The brain changes, adapts, updates, learns. So next time, the prediction is better, more accurate, closer to reality. Learning is error correction, model updating, prediction improvement. The brain is a prediction machine, and it gets better through error, through being wrong, through surprise, through prediction error. This is how infants learn, how children learn, how everyone learns, by predicting, being wrong, updating, predicting again, being less wrong, updating again. Gradually, the predictions improve. Gradually, the model becomes accurate. Gradually, learning happens through prediction and error, again and again. This is why surprise is important, why novelty is important. Surprise is prediction error, large prediction error. Reality was very different from prediction. The brain was very wrong. And large prediction error drives a large update, large learning. Surprising events are memorable, educational, transformative, because they violate expectations, because they create large prediction error, because they force the brain to update, to change, to learn. Seek surprise, seek novelty, seek experiences that violate your expectations. That's where learning happens. That's where growth happens. That's where the brain updates, changes, improves. Your brain can hold about 7 items in working memory, 7 plus or minus 2. That's the capacity, the limit. You can consciously think about 7 things at once. Maybe 5, maybe 9, but around 7. That's it. That's all. This is a severe limitation, a tight bottleneck. You can perceive thousands of things, can store millions of things in long-term memory, but can only consciously think about 7 things at once, 7 items in working memory. This limits problem solving, limits reasoning, limits what you can think through consciously. Complex problems involve more than 7 variables, more than 7 considerations, more than 7 factors. So you can't think through complex problems all at once, can't hold everything in mind, can't consciously process it all. The brain has to break problems down, chunk information, simplify, abstract, to fit within the 7-item limit. This is why complex thinking is hard, why some problems are too complex to think through consciously. The brain's conscious capacity is limited, severely limited, about 7 items. But chunking helps. Chunking is grouping items into larger units. Each chunk counts as 1 item, so you can hold 7 chunks. Each chunk can contain multiple elements, multiple pieces of information, organized together, related together, stored together. Expert chess players don't remember individual pieces. They remember configurations, patterns, chunks of pieces in meaningful arrangements. Each configuration is 1 chunk, so they can remember more, can think about more, can process more, because they're chunking, grouping, organizing information into meaningful units. This is how expertise works, how experts think more effectively. Not because their working memory is larger, it's not, still about 7 items, but because their chunks are richer, more meaningful, contain more information. Experts chunk information better, organize better, think better, with the same limited working memory capacity everyone has. Long-term memory, in contrast, is essentially unlimited. You can store vast amounts of information, unlimited information for a lifetime. Memory doesn't fill up, doesn't run out of space. You don't need to delete old memories to make room for new ones. The brain isn't a hard drive with limited storage. It's plastic, flexible, creating new connections as needed, storing new information without deleting old information. Long-term memory is unlimited, or effectively unlimited. You'll never run out of storage. You'll never fill up your brain. You can keep learning, keep experiencing, keep remembering forever, for your whole life, without limit. But retrieval is the problem, the limitation. You can store unlimited information, but can you retrieve it? Can you access it? Can you remember it when you need it? That's the challenge. That's the difficulty. Not storage, retrieval. Long-term memory is like a vast library, unlimited books, unlimited information. But if you can't find the book you need, if you can't retrieve it, it doesn't help. The information is there, stored somewhere, but inaccessible, irretrievable, forgotten. Not because it's gone, but because you can't find it, can't access it. Retrieval failure. This is most forgetting, not loss of information, but inability to retrieve information. The memory's there, somewhere in the vast library, but you can't find it, can't access it, can't remember it. Retrieval failure. This is why cues help, why context helps, why reminders help. They assist retrieval. They guide you to the right location in the library, the right section, the right shelf, the right book. A smell can trigger a memory. A place can trigger a memory. A word can trigger a memory. Because those are cues, retrieval cues, connected to the memory, encoded with the memory, associated with the memory. When the cue is present, the memory becomes accessible, retrievable, rememberable. The cue guides retrieval, assists access, helps you find the book in the vast library. This is why returning to a place can trigger memories, why hearing a song from your past can bring back memories. The place, the song, they're retrieval cues, connected to memories. When present, they assist retrieval, make memories accessible, make remembering possible. The brain is embodied, not separate from the body, not independent of the body, not just in the body, embodied, connected, integrated, interdependent. The brain affects the body, everyone knows that. The brain controls movement, controls speech, controls behavior. But the body also affects the brain. The body shapes the brain, influences the brain, changes the brain. Embodied cognition. Thinking isn't just in the brain. It's in the body, in movement, in gesture, in posture, in physical state. The body influences thought, influences emotion,
influences cognition. Your posture affects your mood. Sit up straight, you feel more confident, more alert, more positive. Slump down, you feel less confident, less alert, more negative. The body shapes the mind. The posture influences the emotion. This is measurable, demonstrable, real. Posture affects hormones, affects neurotransmitters, affects brain state. The body isn't separate from the mind. The body shapes the mind, influences the mind, changes the mind. Embodied cognition. Your facial expression affects your emotion. Smile, you feel happier. Even forced smiles, even fake smiles. The act of smiling triggers neural pathways associated with happiness, releases neurotransmitters associated with positive emotion. The smile creates the feeling, not just reflects it, creates it. This is the facial feedback hypothesis. The face feeds back to the brain, influences emotion, changes mood. Smile, you feel happier. Frown, you feel sadder. The body shapes the mind. The expression shapes the emotion. Embodied cognition. Movement helps thinking. Walking improves creativity. Exercise improves memory. Physical activity enhances cognition. The body supports the mind, assists the mind, enables the mind. Thinking isn't separate from moving. Cognition isn't separate from physical state. They're integrated, interdependent, connected. Move your body, you improve your mind. Change your posture, you change your emotion. Alter your expression, you alter your feeling. The brain is embodied. The mind is embodied. Cognition is embodied. Body and brain together, not separate, not independent, together, always. The brain is social, evolved in social groups, shaped by social pressures, optimized for social interaction. Much of the brain is dedicated to social cognition, understanding others, predicting others, cooperating with others, competing with others. Social cognition. The brain evolved for this, is specialized for this, is fundamentally social. You are a social being. Your brain is a social brain. You have specialized neural circuits for understanding others, for reading minds, not literally, but for inferring mental states, for understanding intentions, for recognizing emotions, for predicting behavior. Theory of mind, the ability to understand that others have minds, have beliefs, have desires, have perspectives different from yours. This is a sophisticated ability, a complex ability, requires specialized neural circuitry, and humans have it. Develop it early, use it constantly. Every social interaction requires theory of mind, requires understanding others, inferring intentions, predicting responses. Your brain does this automatically, constantly, unconsciously. Social cognition. Mirror neurons may be part of the system. Mirror neurons are neurons that fire both when you perform an action and when you watch someone else perform the same action. They mirror, they match, they resonate with others' actions. These neurons were discovered in monkeys, found in humans, may be part of how we understand others, how we empathize, how we imitate, how we learn from observation. Mirror neurons may provide a direct neural link between self and other, between your actions and their actions, between your experience and their experience. A bridge, a connection, a neural basis for empathy and understanding. But mirror neurons are controversial. Some scientists think they're important, central to social cognition, to empathy, to understanding. Some think they're overhyped, overinterpreted, not as important as initially thought. The jury's still out, the research is ongoing, but the idea is compelling. The idea that
The temporal parietal junction is also involved, the TPJ, where the temporal and parietal lobes meet, on the sides of your brain, behind and slightly above your ears. The temporal parietal junction is involved in perspective taking, in distinguishing self from other, in understanding that others have different viewpoints, different perspectives, different knowledge than you have. The TPJ helps you step outside your own perspective, helps you adopt another's viewpoint, helps you understand that what you know isn't what they know, that what you see isn't what they see, that your perspective is just one perspective among many. The TPJ enables perspective taking, cognitive empathy, understanding without feeling, comprehending without simulating. You can use these systems to understand someone's pain without feeling the pain yourself, to recognize their sadness without becoming sad, to comprehend their fear without becoming afraid. You understand intellectually, cognitively, without emotional simulation. This is adaptive, useful, necessary, especially in contexts where emotional empathy would be overwhelming, where feeling everything would be incapacitating, where you need to help without drowning in emotion. Cognitive empathy allows that, allows understanding and helping without emotional overwhelm, without empathic distress. Cognitive empathy is slower than emotional empathy, more deliberate, more controlled, requires more cognitive effort, more attention, more conscious processing. Emotional empathy happens automatically, fast, unconsciously. You see pain, you feel pain, immediate. But cognitive empathy requires thinking, requires considering, requires mentally representing someone else's perspective, their thoughts, their beliefs, their knowledge. This takes time, takes effort, takes cognitive resources. Cognitive empathy is not automatic, not reflexive, not immediate. It's effortful, deliberate, controlled, but also more flexible, more manageable, more sustainable. Both types of empathy are important. Both are useful. Both serve different functions. Emotional empathy creates connection, creates shared feeling, creates motivation to help. When you feel someone's pain, you're motivated to stop it, motivated to comfort, motivated to intervene. Emotional empathy drives pro-social behavior, drives helping, drives care, because you feel what they feel and you want the negative feeling to stop, for them and for you. This is powerful. This is why emotional empathy matters, why it's adaptive, why evolution gave us shared neural circuitry for pain and emotion, so we'd be motivated to help, to care, to reduce others' suffering. Because in doing so, we reduce our own empathic distress. Both benefit. The person in pain gets help, you get relief from empathic distress. Emotional empathy creates win-win, creates pro-social motivation, creates care. But emotional empathy can be biased, selective. You feel more empathy for people like you, people in your group, people you identify with, people you love. Your empathic response is stronger for them. Your interior insula activates more strongly when you see a loved one in pain than when you see a stranger in pain. Even more so than when you see someone from an outgroup in pain, someone you don't identify with, someone you see as different, other. Your empathic response diminishes, becomes weaker, less automatic, less strong. This is empathy bias, in-group favoritism in emotional empathy. You feel more for those similar to you, those you identify with, those you love, and less for others, for strangers, for outgroups, for people you see as different. This is problematic. This limits empathy, makes it selective, makes it biased, makes it fail precisely when it's most needed, for understanding and caring about people different from you, people you don't naturally identify with, people outside your group. Emotional empathy fails there, becomes weak, becomes selective, becomes biased. This is why emotional empathy alone is insufficient, why we need cognitive empathy too. Because cognitive empathy is less biased, more flexible, more controllable. You can choose to understand someone's perspective, even if you don't automatically feel their emotion. You can deliberately consider their mental state even if your anterior insula doesn't automatically activate. Cognitive empathy allows you to extend understanding beyond your automatic empathic response, beyond your in-group, beyond the people you naturally feel for, to anyone, to everyone, through deliberate effort, through cognitive work, through choosing to understand. Both types of empathy involve different neural systems, different regions, different processes. Emotional empathy, anterior insula, anterior cingulate cortex, automatic, fast, feeling-based, simulation, shared circuitry. Cognitive empathy, medial prefrontal cortex, temporal parietal junction, deliberate, slower, thinking-based, mentalizing, perspective-taking. Different systems, different processes, both necessary, both important. Emotional empathy creates feeling and motivation. Cognitive empathy creates understanding and flexibility. Together, they create full empathy, full social understanding, the ability to both feel with others and understand others, both emotionally connect and intellectually comprehend. Both systems, both types, both necessary for full social functioning.
Empathy is multiple, not one thing, not one system, multiple types, multiple processes, multiple regions, all working together, sometimes coordinated, sometimes separate, sometimes in balance, sometimes one dominates, flexible, adaptable, context dependent. Sometimes you need emotional empathy, need to feel with someone, need to connect emotionally, need to be moved to be motivated to help through shared feeling. Other times, you need cognitive empathy, need to understand without feeling, need to help without being overwhelmed, need to maintain professional distance while still comprehending and assisting. Different contexts, different needs, different types of empathy. The brain has both, uses both, flexibly, adaptively, as needed. Empathy is multiple, not one thing, not one system, multiple types, multiple processes, multiple regions, all working together, sometimes coordinated, sometimes separate, sometimes in balance, sometimes one dominates, flexible, adaptable, context dependent. Sometimes you need emotional empathy, need to feel with someone, need to connect emotionally, need to be moved, to be motivated to help through shared feeling. Other times, you need cognitive empathy, need to understand without feeling, need to help without being overwhelmed, need to maintain professional distance while still comprehending and assisting. Different contexts, different needs, different types of empathy. The brain has both, uses both, flexibly, adaptively, as needed. Loneliness affects the brain. This is not metaphorical, not just emotional pain, not just psychological distress. Loneliness actually changes the brain, physically changes it, structurally changes it, functionally changes it. Chronic loneliness, chronic social isolation, long-term absence of meaningful social connection, this alters the brain in measurable ways, in significant ways, in harmful ways. Loneliness is not just painful, it's dangerous, neurologically dangerous, brain dangerous, health dangerous. Loneliness changes the brain. Changes the brain means structural changes, physical changes, anatomical changes, gray matter changes. Gray matter is the part of the brain that contains neuron cell bodies, the processing centers, the computational tissue. Gray matter is where thinking happens, where processing happens, where neural computation occurs. And chronic loneliness reduces gray matter in specific regions, social cognition regions, the regions involved in understanding others, in processing social information, in empathy, in mentalizing, in theory of mind. These regions show reduced gray matter in chronically lonely people, less tissue, fewer neurons, reduced volume. The brain is physically shrinking in social cognition areas due to loneliness, due to lack of social connection, due to absence of meaningful interaction. This is probably adaptive in a terrible way. The brain is efficient, uses resources where they're needed, eliminates resources where they're not. If you're not using social brain regions, if you're isolated, alone, without social interaction, the brain may decide those resources aren't needed, may prune those connections, may reduce those regions. Use it or lose it. If you're not using social brain regions, they atrophy, shrink, reduce. This is neuroplasticity. The same principle that allows learning and growth also allows atrophy and decline. What you don't use, you lose. And if you're chronically lonely, chronically isolated, you're not using social brain regions, not exercising them, not stimulating them. So they shrink. Gray matter reduces. The brain physically changes, becomes less social, less able to process social information, less able to connect. A vicious cycle. Loneliness reduces social brain tissue, making social connection even harder, increasing loneliness, further reducing social brain tissue. Downward spiral. Brain change creating more isolation, creating more brain change. But it's not just structure, it's function too. Activity patterns change. The lonely brain functions differently, processes information differently, responds differently, shows different activity patterns in response to social stimuli. The social brain regions that remain show alternate activity, different responses, different patterns, not just reduced size, altered function. The lonely brain processes social information differently than the connected brain, shows less activity in response to positive social stimuli, shows more activity in response to negative social stimuli, becomes biased to threat, toward negative.
The brain needs social connection. This is not optional, not luxury, not just nice to have. Need. The brain needs social connection, needs interaction, needs relationship, needs meaningful engagement with other people. The brain evolved in social contexts, evolved for social life, evolved to be social. Human brains are social brains, designed for connection, optimized for interaction, dependent on relationship. The brain needs social input, needs social stimulation, needs social exercise. Just like the brain needs sensory input to develop properly, children raised in sensory deprivation show developmental abnormalities, the brain needs social input to function properly. Adults experiencing social deprivation show functional abnormalities, show structural changes, show inflammation, show impairment. The brain needs social connection, needs it, not wants it, needs it for proper function, for health, for survival. Without social connection, the brain suffers. We've described how, structurally, functionally, inflammatorily, cognitively. The brain suffers without social connection, changes, degrades, declines, functions less well, becomes less healthy, less able, less integrated. The absence of social connection harms the brain, just as the absence of food harms the body, just as the absence of oxygen harms the cells. The absence of social connection harms the brain. Social connection is a biological need, a brain need, a health need, not optional, not luxury, need. Without it, you suffer. Your brain suffers. Your health suffers. Your life suffers. Social connection is necessary, essential, fundamental to brain health, to mental health, to overall health, to life. Loneliness matters. This is the bottom line. This is the key point. This is what all the neuroscience is telling us. Loneliness matters. Connection matters. Not just for happiness, not just for emotional well-being, not just for quality of life, for brain health, for physical health, for longevity, for cognitive function, for disease risk, for survival. Connection matters biologically, neurologically, medically. Loneliness harms. Connection heals. Isolation degrades. Relationship sustains. This is biology. This is neuroscience. This is medical fact. Loneliness matters. Connection matters. For brain health, for mental health, for life. The brain is social. This is fundamental. This is central. This is essential to understanding what the brain is and how it works. The brain is not an isolated processor, not a computer running alone, not a thinking machine separate from others. The brain is social, evolved for social life, structured for social function, dependent on social connection. The brain is inherently, fundamentally, essentially social. You are a social being. Your brain is a social brain. This is not optional, not secondary, not just one feature among many. This is fundamental, central, definitional. Human brains are social brains. You are a social creature, and your brain needs social connection to function properly, to develop properly, to maintain health, to sustain function. The brain is social, needs social, suffers without social. This is who you are, what you are, how you are. Social. Your brain is social. You are social. Connection is not optional. Connection is necessary for your brain, for your health, for your life. The brain is you, or you are your brain. We've arrived at this fundamental claim, this philosophical position, this neuroscientific conclusion. You are your brain. Not you have a brain, not you use a brain, not you're something separate that happens to have a brain. You are your brain. This is materialism. Physicalism, the philosophical position that mental states are brain states, that consciousness is neural activity, that everything you experience, everything you think, everything you feel, everything you are is brain activity, neural processes, physical processes, chemical processes, electrical processes. Nothing more, nothing separate, nothing extra. No soul, no spirit, no consciousness separate from brain, no you separate from your physical brain. Just brain. When the brain dies, you die. When neural activity ceases, consciousness ceases. When the brain is destroyed, you are destroyed. Nothing remains, nothing continues, nothing survives. You are your brain, and brains are mortal, physical, destructible. When they're gone, you're gone. Nothing more means nothing more. No afterlife, no reincarnation, no ghost, no spirit, no continuation. Just ending, just cessation, just death. You are your brain and nothing more. This is materialism, physicalism, the scientific view. Nothing separate, no dualism. Dualism is the view that mind and body are separate, that consciousness and physical matter are different kinds of things, that you are a non-physical consciousness somehow connected to a physical brain. Descartes believed this. Many religions teach this. Common sense suggests this. It feels like there's a you in there, a self, a consciousness, something separate from the physical stuff, something that has a brain but isn't the brain, something that uses a brain but exists independently. Dualism. Mind and body are separate. But neuroscience says no, says dualism is wrong, says there's no evidence for separation, no evidence for non-physical consciousness, no evidence for mind separate from brain. Everything we observe, everything we measure, everything we understand about consciousness, it's all brain activity, it's all neural processes, it's all physical. Nothing separate, nothing non-physical, nothing independent of brain. You are your brain. Not separate from your brain, not in addition to your brain, your brain. You are your brain. Physicalism, materialism, not dualism. No soul. This is perhaps the most uncomfortable implication, the most difficult to accept. No soul, no immortal essence, no eternal you, no part of you that survives death, no part of you that exists independently of your body, no part of you that's non-physical, non-material, non-brain. No soul. Just brain, just body, just biological organism with a complex brain. That brain creates consciousness, creates self, creates you. But there's nothing extra, nothing supernatural required, nothing non-physical involved. Just brain, complex brain, sophisticated brain, an incredibly organized brain. But just brain, nothing else. Physical matter, biological tissue, 3 pounds of cells. That's you. That's all you are. That's what you are. Brain, just brain. Physical, mortal, material, brain. Just neurons firing, electrical activity, action potentials propagating down axons, signals traveling through neural networks, billions of neurons, trillions of connections, constantly active, constantly firing, constantly signaling, patterns of activity, patterns of firing, patterns of connectivity. Those patterns are thoughts, are feelings, are perceptions, are consciousness, are you. Just neurons firing in patterns, in networks, in coordinated activity. That's thinking, that's experiencing, that's being. Just neurons firing. Nothing more mysterious than that, nothing more magical than that. Just physical processes, just biological activity, just neurons firing, and you emerge. Consciousness emerges, experience emerges from patterns of neurons firing. Just that, nothing more. Just physical processes, chemistry, electricity, biology, physics. Nothing supernatural, nothing magical, nothing non-physical. Just the same kinds of processes that happen everywhere in nature. Chemical reactions, electrical signals, molecular interactions, cellular function. Nothing special about the processes themselves. What's special is the organization, the pattern, the complexity. The way these ordinary physical processes are organized in the brain creates something extraordinary, creates consciousness, creates you. But the processes themselves are ordinary, physical, material, natural. Nothing beyond nature, nothing beyond physics. Just physical processes organized in extraordinary ways, creating extraordinary results, creating consciousness, creating you. But still just physical processes, nothing more. Creating mental experience. This is the mystery, the hard problem. How do physical processes create subjective experience? How does neural activity become consciousness? How does matter become mind? This is the hard problem of consciousness, and neuroscience doesn't fully solve it, doesn't fully explain it, doesn't fully understand it. We know consciousness is brain activity. We know they're correlated. We know change brain activity changes consciousness. We know destroy the brain, you destroy consciousness. The dependence is clear. The correlation is clear. The identity is strongly supported. Even if the mechanism isn't fully understood, even if the explanation isn't complete, even if the mystery remains, consciousness is brain activity. We just don't fully understand how brain activity creates consciousness yet. But lack of complete explanation doesn't mean dualism is true, doesn't mean consciousness is non-physical, doesn't mean there's something extra, just means more research needed, more understanding needed, more time needed. The mystery remains, but it's a scientific mystery, a natural mystery, not a supernatural one. Creating consciousness, creating awareness, creating experience, creating subjectivity.
all created by brain, by physical processes, by neurons firing, by chemical signaling, somehow in ways we don't fully understand, but created nonetheless. Produced, generated, brought into being by brain activity. When the brain is functioning in certain ways, consciousness exists. When the brain stops functioning, consciousness stops existing. The brain creates consciousness, generates it, produces it. Consciousness depends on brain, emerges from brain, is created by brain. This is what the evidence shows, what the research demonstrates, what neuroscience concludes. Brain creates consciousness. You are your brain creating consciousness, creating you.
Creating you. This is the ultimate implication, the final conclusion. Your brain creates you. You are a process, a pattern, an activity of your brain, not a thing, not an object, not a substance. A process, an ongoing process, a continuous process. As long as your brain is functioning, as long as neurons are firing, as long as patterns are active, you exist. You are. When those processes stop, you cease, you end. You are a process, your brain's process, your brain creating you, continuously, constantly, every moment. Your brain generates you, produces you, maintains you. You are what it feels like to be your brain, from the inside. You are your brain's experience of itself, your brain creating consciousness, and that consciousness is you. You are your brain creating you. This is the neuroscientific view. This is materialism. This is physicalism. You are your brain. Nothing more, nothing separate. Your brain creating you continuously until it stops, and then you stop, because you are your brain and nothing more. This is a scientific view, not speculation, not philosophy alone, science. Neuroscience, based on evidence, based on research, based on decades of studying the brain and consciousness, based on observing what happens when brains are damaged, when brains are changed, when brains are stimulated, based on measuring brain activity during conscious experience, based on correlating neural patterns with mental states, based on understanding how neurons work, how networks function, how brain creates behavior and experience. Based on all of this, neuroscience concludes you are your brain. Mental states are brain states. Consciousness is neural activity. You are physical, material, biological. Your brain creating consciousness, creating you. This is a scientific view, supported by evidence, consistent with research, the conclusion of neuroscience. The neuroscientific view, the dominant view in neuroscience, the consensus view. Not everyone agrees. Some neuroscientists are dualists. Some believe consciousness is something more, something separate, something non-physical. But they're the minority. The vast majority of neuroscientists are materialists, physicalists, believe consciousness is brain activity, believe you are your brain. This is the mainstream view, the standard view, the view supported by most evidence, the view most consistent with research, the neuroscientific view. You are your brain. Consciousness is neural activity, nothing more, nothing separate, nothing non-physical. This is what neuroscience teaches, what the evidence indicates, what the research supports, the neuroscientific view. You are your brain. You are your brain. We keep returning to this because it's central, because it's important, because it has implications, profound implications for everything, for how you understand yourself, for how you understand others, for how you understand life and death, for how you understand morality and responsibility and meaning. You are your brain. This changes everything, or should change everything if you take it seriously, if you really accept it, if you really believe it. You are your brain. Not you have a brain, you are your brain. This is identity. This is what you are. Brain, physical, material, mortal. This is you. Change the brain, you change the person. This is one implication, one consequence, one thing that follows. If you are your brain, then changing your brain changes you. Not just your thoughts or feelings, you, yourself, your personality, your identity, your consciousness. Change the brain, you change all of that. because all of that is brain activity, is brain patterns, is brain processes. So change the brain, you change the person. This is observable, demonstrable. Brain damage changes personality, changes behavior, changes who someone is. Tumors change personality. Diseases change personality. Drugs change personality. All by changing the brain, changing neural activity, changing brain chemistry, changing brain function. Change the brain, change the person, because the person is the brain. This is why brain damage is so devastating, so tragic, so complete. When someone suffers severe brain damage, they change, fundamentally change, become different, become someone else. Not entirely, not completely, but significantly. Family members say they're not the same person anymore, and they're right. Not metaphorically, literally. The person changed because the brain changed. The person is the brain, and the brain changed. So the person changed. Personality changes, temperament changes, abilities change, everything changes. Because everything is brain, and the brain changes. This is why brain damage is so tragic. It doesn't just impair function, it changes who someone is, changes their identity, changes their self, because the self is brain, and the brain is damaged. Damage the brain, you damage the person. Same principle, same consequence. Brain damage is person damage, not just impairment, not just disability, not just loss of function. Person damage. Damage to who they are, to their self, to their identity, to their consciousness. Damage the brain, you damage all of that, because all of that is brain, is neural tissue, is brain activity. Damage that tissue, impair that activity, and you damage the person. Directly, literally, completely. This is why brain damage is so devastating, so tragic, so complete. When someone suffers severe brain damage, they change, fundamentally change, become different, become someone else. Not entirely, not completely, but significantly. Family members say they're not the same person anymore, and they're right. Not metaphorically, literally. The person changed because the brain changed. The person is the brain, and the brain changed. So personality changes, temperament changes, abilities change, everything changes. Because everything is brain, and the brain changed. This is why brain damage is so tragic. It doesn't just impair function, it changes who someone is, changes their identity, changes their self, because the self is brain, and the brain is damaged. It feels like you are something separate from your brain. This is the persistent intuition, the stubborn feeling, the unshakable sense. It feels like there's a you, a self, a consciousness, something experiencing, something deciding, something that is you, and it feels separate from the brain, separate from the body, like you're in there, inside, looking out, experiencing through the body, but not identical to the body. This is how it feels. This is the subjective experience. This is consciousness experiencing itself. And it creates a strong sense that you are something separate, something more, something beyond the physical organ. This feeling is so strong that most people never question it. Most people assume it's true, assume they are a self, a separate consciousness, something more than brain. The feeling creates the belief. The intuition creates the conclusion. I feel like a separate self, therefore I am a separate self. This seems obvious, seems undeniable, seems like the most certain truth. But neuroscience questions it, challenges it, says the feeling is misleading, says you're not separate, says you are your brain, says the feeling is illusion, construction, experience created by brain activity, not reflection of separate self actually existing. The feeling is real, but what the feeling seems to point to, a separate self, doesn't exist. Just brain creating that experience of you, creating the feeling of you, creating consciousness that feels like it's separate but isn't. The self is a construction, a process, an emergent property of brain activity, not a separate thing, not an independent entity, not a soul or spirit or consciousness independent of brain. Just brain creating the experience of self, creating you as an experience, as a feeling, as a construction, but not as a separate thing, not as something independent, just as brain activity experienced from the inside. But this is strange, profoundly strange, deeply uncomfortable, hard to accept, hard to believe,
hard to really internalize, because it contradicts the most fundamental intuition, the most basic feeling, the feeling of being a self, the feeling of being you, the feeling that there's something here, something experiencing, something deciding, something that is you, and it feels separate from the brain, separate from the body, like you're in there, inside, looking out, experiencing through the body, but not identical to the body. This is how it feels. This is the subjective experience. This is consciousness experiencing itself. And it creates the strong sense that you are something separate, something more, something beyond the physical organ. This feeling is so strong that most people never question it. Most people assume it's true, assume they are a self, a separate consciousness, something more than brain. The feeling creates the belief. The intuition creates the conclusion. I feel like a separate self, therefore I am a separate self. This seems obvious, seems undeniable, seems like the most certain truth. But neuroscience questions it, challenges it, says the feeling is misleading, says you're not separate, says you are your brain, says the feeling is illusion, construction, experience created by brain activity, not reflection of separate self actually existing. The feeling is real, but what the feeling seems to point to, a separate self, doesn't exist. Just brain creating that experience of you, creating the feeling of you, creating consciousness that feels like it's separate but isn't. The self is a construction, a process, an emergent property of brain activity, not a separate thing, not an independent entity, not a soul or spirit or consciousness independent of brain. Just brain creating the experience of self, creating you as an experience, as a feeling, as a construction, but not as a separate thing, not as something independent, just as brain activity experienced from the inside. But it is common sense to believe you are not your brain.
It feels like there's a you in there, the homunculus again, the little person inside, the observer, the experiencer, the decision maker, the self, in there, inside your head, behind your eyes, looking out, experiencing, deciding, being you. This is the phenomenology. This is how consciousness feels from the inside, like there's someone in there, a you, experiencing everything, observing thoughts, feeling feelings, making decisions, the subject of experience, the experiencer, the you, in there. This feeling is so strong, so immediate, so persistent that it seems undeniable. There must be a you in there, something experiencing, something observing, something being you. How can this feeling be wrong? How can this intuition be misleading? It's the most direct thing, the most immediate thing, the most obvious thing. There's a you in there, experiencing this right now, reading this right now, thinking about this right now. How can that be illusion? How can that be wrong? This is the challenge to the neuroscientific view, the challenge to materialism. It feels so clearly like there's a you. How can you say there isn't? How can you say it's just brain? How can you say there's no separate self? It feels like there is. Right now, undeniably, there's a you in there, reading this, thinking this, being this. How can that be illusion? A self. That's what the you feels like. A self. A unified, continuous, persistent identity. The thing that remains the same through all the changes, through all the experiences, through all the time. The self. The unchanging observer. The continuous consciousness. The persistent you. This is what it feels like there's a self, a stable self, a real self. Something that was you yesterday is you today, will be you tomorrow. The same self, the continuous self, the real self. This feeling creates the belief, creates the assumption, creates the conviction. There is a self. I am a self. I have a self. The self is real. The self is me. This seems undeniable, seems obviously true, seems like the foundation of everything. The self, myself, the thing I am, the thing that experiences, the thing that continues. The self, real, undeniable, fundamental. But neuroscience questions this, challenges this, says the self is constructed, is process, is illusion, not thing, not entity, not stable, unchanging reality. Construction, created by brain, emerging from brain activity, not existing independently, not persisting unchanged, not real in the way it feels real. The self is constructed, is emergent, is illusory. This is what neuroscience says. This is the uncomfortable claim, the counterintuitive claim, the claim that challenges the most fundamental feeling, the feeling of being a self. Neuroscience says no separate self exists, just brain, creating the experience of self, the feeling of self, the illusion of self, but no actual separate self, no entity, no thing, no unchanging observer, just process, just activity, just brain creating the experience of being a self, creating you as experience, as feeling, as construction, but not as separate reality, not as independent entity, not as thing. The self is constructed, is illusory, is brain activity experienced from the inside, nothing more. A consciousness, something experiencing, something aware, something sentient, something conscious. This is what you feel like consciousness, like awareness, like experience. Not just mechanical process, not just physical activity, not just neurons firing, but consciousness, something it's like to be, something experiencing, something aware. Consciousness. And consciousness feels special, feels different from physical, feels non-material, feels like it can't be reduced to brain activity, can't be explained by neurons firing, must be something more, something extra, something separate. Consciousness feels like it proves dualism, proves you're more than brain, because consciousness feels different from matter, from physical, from brain. Consciousness feels like something separate, something special, something that can't be just neurons. This feeling is powerful, overwhelming, undeniable. You experience consciousness right now, this awareness, this experience, this sense of being, and it doesn't feel like neurons firing, doesn't feel like chemistry, doesn't feel like electricity, doesn't feel physical at all. It feels like something else, something different, something special, something that transcends the physical. Consciousness feels like pure awareness, pure experience, pure being. Not matter, not mechanics, not biology, something else, something separate, something that can't be reduced to brain tissue and neural activity. This is what consciousness feels like. This is the subjective experience. This is why the hard problem exists. This is the hard problem again, the hard problem of consciousness, the deepest question in neuroscience and philosophy. How do physical processes create subjective experience? How does matter become mind? How do neurons firing create the feeling of what it's like to be? How does objective third-person physical brain activity become subjective first-person experiential consciousness? This is the hard problem, and it's hard because there seems to be an explanatory gap, a conceptual chasm between the physical and the experiential, between brain and consciousness, between neurons and awareness. We can describe the physical processes in complete detail, can map every neuron, can measure every chemical, can track every electrical signal. But even with complete physical description, we haven't explained experience, haven't explained what it's like, haven't explained consciousness. The physical description seems to leave something out, seems to miss something essential, seems unable to capture the subjective, the experiential, the what it's likeness. This is the hard problem. This is the explanatory gap. This is why consciousness seems special, seems separate, seems irreducible to physical processes. Because it feels so different from physical processes. Physical processes are mechanical, causal, deterministic, describable in objective terms, explainable in scientific language. Physical processes are objective facts, observable, measurable, predictable. But consciousness isn't like that. Consciousness is experiential, subjective, first person, not observable from outside, not measurable in the same way, not predictable in the same way. Consciousness is what it feels like from the inside, and what it feels like is nothing like physical processes, nothing like neurons firing, nothing like chemicals binding, nothing like electrical signals. It feels like awareness, like experience, like being, something qualitatively different from physical processes, something that seems to be a different kind of thing entirely. Physical processes are one kind of thing. Consciousness seems to be another kind of thing.
different, separate, irreducible. This is why consciousness feels so different from physical processes, why it seems to resist physical explanation, why it seems like something more, something separate, something special. So separate. The separateness is palpable, felt, experienced. You feel separate from your body, separate from your brain. You feel like something experiencing through the body, looking out through the eyes, hearing through the ears, feeling through the skin, but not the same as the body, not the same as the brain, something separate, something inside, something using the body, experiencing through the body, but not the body itself. This is the feeling. This is the experience. This is why dualism feels true, why it feels like you're a consciousness separate from a physical body, because that's what it feels like. That's the direct experience, the immediate awareness. You feel separate. You feel distinct. You feel like something non-physical inhabiting something physical. This feeling of separateness is powerful, convincing, undeniable. How can this feeling be wrong? How can this intuition be misleading? It's the most direct thing, the most immediate thing, the most obvious thing. There's a you in there, experiencing this right now, reading this right now, thinking about this right now. How can that be illusion? How can that be wrong? This is a challenge to the neuroscientific view, the challenge to materialism. It feels so clearly like there's a you. How can you say there isn't? How can you say it's just brain? How can you say there's no separate self? It feels like there is, right now, undeniably. There's a you in there, reading this, thinking this, being this. How can that be illusion? A self. That's what the you feels like. A self. A unified, continuous, persistent identity. The thing that remains the same through all the changes, through all the experiences, through all the time. The self. The unchanging observer. The continuous consciousness. The persistent you. This is what it feels like there's a self. A stable self. A real self. Something that was you yesterday is you today, will be you tomorrow. The same self, the continuous self, the real self. This feeling creates the belief, creates the assumption, creates the conviction. There is a self. I am a self. I have a self. The self is real. The self is me. This seems undeniable, seems obviously true, seems like the foundation of everything. The self, myself, the thing I am, the thing that experiences, the thing that continues. The self. Real, undeniable, fundamental. But neuroscience questions this, challenges this, says the self is constructed, is misleading. The feeling is misleading, leads you to wrong conclusions, leads you to believe things that aren't true, leads you to believe consciousness is separate, special, non-physical, but it's not. The feeling is misleading, leading you astray, creating false beliefs, false understanding, false metaphysics based on how things seem, how things feel, but not how things are. The feeling is a poor guide to reality, poor guide to truth, poor guide to what consciousness actually is. The feeling is misleading. Trust the evidence instead. Trust the science. Trust the research. Trust what we can measure and observe and test, not what consciousness feels like, what it actually is, based on evidence, not intuition, not feeling, not subjective appearance. Evidence, research, science. The feeling is misleading. Don't trust it. Trust science instead. Is how brain activity feels from the inside. That's all the feeling is. That's all subjective experience is. Brain activity felt from the inside, experience from the first-person perspective, not something separate from brain activity, not something in addition to brain activity, not something produced by brain activity, just brain activity, experienced, felt, known from the inside. This is consciousness, brain activity from the inside, physical processes from the internal perspective, neural firing experienced subjectively. That's what creates the feeling. That's what creates the illusion of separateness. Brain activity experiencing itself, creating the sense of an experiencer, creating the sense of consciousness as something separate. But it's not separate. It's just how brain activity feels from the inside, from the first-person perspective, from the subjective perspective. Brain activity feeling like something, feeling like consciousness, feeling like awareness, feeling like separateness, but still just brain activity.
experience from within, felt from inside. That's consciousness. That's the feeling. That's the illusion. Brain activity felt from the inside. But it's still brain activity, despite the feeling, despite the illusion, despite how it seems. It's still brain activity, still physical processes, still neurons firing, still material events. The feeling doesn't change that. The illusion doesn't change that. The seeming doesn't change that. Reality is what it is, regardless of how it seems, regardless of how it feels. Consciousness is brain activity, physical, material, neural. That's what it is. The feeling that it's something more is just how brain activity feels from inside. Doesn't change what it actually is. Still brain activity, still physical, still material, still neurons and synapses and chemicals and electricity. That's consciousness. The feeling is misleading, but reality remains. Consciousness is brain activity. Still, always, completely, still material, made of matter, dependent on matter, identical to processes of matter, material, not immaterial, not separate from matter, not beyond matter, material. The feeling of consciousness is material, is brain matter, is neural tissue, is cellular activity, material. The experience is material, the awareness is material, the consciousness is material. All of it, every aspect, every quality, every feature, material, made of matter, occurring in matter, dependent on matter, identical to organization and activity of matter. Material. This is materialism. This is physicalism. This is what follows from all the evidence, from all the research, from everything we know about how consciousness depends on brain. Consciousness is material, still, despite feeling immaterial, despite seeming non-material, despite appearing beyond matter, still material. Always material, completely material. This is what consciousness is, still reducible to neurons and synapses and chemicals. Consciousness can be explained in terms of neurons and synapses and chemicals, can be understood as neural activity, can be reduced to physical processes. This is reductionism, the view that higher-level phenomena can be explained by lower-level phenomena, that wholes can be understood through their parts, that complex things can be reduced to simpler components, and consciousness can be reduced, can be explained, can be understood in terms of neurons, in terms of synapses, in terms of chemicals, in terms of electrical signals, in terms of physical processes. Consciousness is reducible to these, is explainable by these, is understandable through these, not something extra, not something separate, not something irreducible, reducible to neurons, to synapses, to chemicals, to physical processes. This is what neuroscience teaches, what reductionism claims, what materialism implies. Consciousness is reducible to brain, to neurons, to physical processes, reducible, explainable, understandable in physical terms. Still, consciousness is brain activity. This is the central claim, the fundamental claim, the claim that follows from all the evidence. Consciousness is brain activity, not separate from brain activity, not produced by brain activity, not caused by brain activity, identical to brain activity. Consciousness is brain activity. When brain activity happens in certain patterns, consciousness happens. When brain activity stops, consciousness stops. Change brain activity, you change consciousness. Consciousness is brain activity. This is identity, not correlation, not causation. Identity. They're the same thing, described differently, observed differently, measured differently, but the same thing. Consciousness is brain activity. Brain activity is consciousness. Same thing, not two things. One thing. Feels special. Yes, consciousness feels special, feels unique, feels important, feels irreducible. This is true. This is accurate. This is how consciousness feels. Special. But feeling special doesn't make it special, doesn't make it separate, doesn't make it non-physical, doesn't make it irreducible. The feeling is subjective appearance, not objective reality. Consciousness feels special, but is brain activity. Feels independent, but is dependent on brain. Feels non-physical, but is physical processes. The feeling and the reality are different. The seeming and the being are different. The first-person and third-person perspectives are different. Consciousness feels separate, but is brain activity. Both true. Feels separate is physical. Feels independent is dependent. Feels non-physical is material. Both. The feeling is real, but misleading. The reality is different. Consciousness feels separate, but isn't. Is brain activity, but it isn't. That's the conclusion. That's the truth. That's reality. Consciousness isn't special, isn't separate, isn't non-physical, isn't immaterial, isn't irreducible, isn't what it feels like those things, but isn't, is brain activity, physical, material, irreducible. That's what consciousness is, not what it feels like, what it is. Consciousness isn't separate, isn't special, isn't non-physical, is brain, is physical, is material. This is the truth. This is reality. This is what neuroscience teaches. Consciousness isn't what it feels like, is brain activity. Nothing more, is just brain. That's all. That's the reductive claim. That's materialism. That's physicalism. Consciousness is just brain, just neurons, just physical processes, just material events. Nothing more, nothing extra, nothing separate, nothing special, just brain. Doing what brains do. Firing, processing, creating patterns, creating activity, and that activity is consciousness. That's all, just brain, creating consciousness by being consciousness, by doing what brains do. Just brain, ordinary organ, biological tissue, material substance. That's consciousness. Nothing more mysterious than that, nothing more special than that, nothing more separate than that. Just brain, ordinary matter, organized extraordinarily, creating consciousness, being consciousness. Just brain. That's all consciousness is. Experience from the inside. Yes, consciousness is brain activity experienced from the inside, felt from the first-person perspective, known subjectively. This is what creates the illusion of separateness, the illusion of specialness, the illusion of non-physicality. Brain activity experiencing itself, creating the sense of an experiencer, creating the sense of consciousness as something separate. But it's not separate. It's just how brain activity feels from the inside, from the first-person view, from the subjective perspective. Brain activity feeling like something, feeling like consciousness, feeling like awareness, feeling like separateness, but still just brain activity. Experience from within, felt from inside. That's consciousness. That's the feeling. That's the illusion. Brain activity felt from the inside, but it's still not. Final statement, final claim, final truth. Consciousness is not something more, not something separate, not something non-physical, not something special, not something irreducible. It's not. Despite the feeling, despite the appearance, despite the intuition, despite how it seems from the inside, it's not something more. Is brain activity, is physical processes, is material events, is neural patterns. That's all. That's what it is. Not what it seems, what it is. Consciousness is not separate, isn't special, isn't non-physical, is brain, is physical, is material. This is the truth. This is reality. This is what neuroscience teaches. Consciousness isn't what it feels like, is brain activity. Nothing more, is just brain. That's all. That's the reductive claim. That's materialism. That's physicalism. Consciousness is just brain, just neurons, just physical processes, just material events. Nothing more, nothing extra, nothing separate, nothing special, just brain, doing what brains do. Firing, processing, creating patterns, creating activity, and that activity is consciousness. That's all, just brain, creating consciousness by being consciousness, by doing what brains do. Just brain, ordinary organ, biological tissue, material substance. That's consciousness. Nothing more mysterious than that, nothing more special than that, nothing more separate than that. Just brain, ordinary matter, organized extraordinarily, creating consciousness, being consciousness. Just brain. That's all consciousness is. Experience from the inside. Yes, consciousness is